let's talk about discovering blind SSRF vulnerabilities. So as we mentioned earlier, the main problem with blind SSRF vulnerabilities is that it does not send a response. So the forged request will be executed by the vulnerable web application. It will be sent to whatever destination we're asking it to go to, but there is no response sent back in here, and therefore there is no way for us to know that our payload got executed. Or maybe there is. What we can do, we could send a forged request to get the vulnerable web server hosting the vulnerable web application to send a request to a server that I control as the hacker. And then I can look at the logs of my server, and if I see a request coming from this web server, then I will know that I managed to hijack this web server and get it to send requests to another web server that is not supposed to send requests to. And then from there, we'll talk about exploitation, but like I said, we'll cover that in the next lecture. So let's go ahead and have an example of this. So we have a lab right here, and as you can see, this lab is rated expert. So we're just going to run it in a new tab. And as usual, we always say that you want to test this website, test every single functionality of it, use it as a normal user and see how it works. And once you're done with this, we're going to turn on our interceptor and intercept the request and discover vulnerabilities and possibly exploit them. So let's click on a product, and we have the request that is sent in here. And as usual, you want to go again and test all the parameters that you have. But we're not going to be doing that because I've already tested that. And what we want to do is we want to play with the referrer value that we have in here. So as you can see, we have a website that is being sent in here as the value for the referrer. And as shown previously, when you see full links like this being sent as a request, you want to play with them and test for open redirect vulnerabilities and for server-side request forgeries. And we covered a number of ways of discovering server-side request forgeries. I'm not going to show it right now because I don't want to waste your time, but none of them will appear to work, but they're actually working. They're not going to appear like it's working because this is an example of a blind SSRF vulnerability. Therefore, when you're going to send it a request like this, it's actually going to work. It's going to send it to wherever you want to send it, but it's not going to send you a response. Therefore, we're going to have to modify that to a location of a server that we own. So you could start any cloud server on Amazon or Linode and put the address for that server in here. Or you could use the collaborator feature of the Burp suite. Now the collaborator feature is only available in the pro version of Burp suite. So if you don't want to pay for the pro version, you're going to have to set up your own cloud instance. And for this lab, for this particular lab, they actually have it restricted to only work with Burp Collaborator because they don't want you to be using their server to send requests to any server on the internet. So it's understandable. That's why if you want to complete this lab, you will have to get the collaborator, but the collaborator is not necessary for discovering blind SSRF vulnerabilities. You could use your own cloud instance on the internet. To use the Burp collaborator, we're going to go to the Burp menu and we're going to run collaborator client. And it's asking you for the number of payloads to generate. So we're just going to set it to 1. We're going to click on copy to clipboard, and this will copy the payload URL in my clipboard. So if I send a request to this payload, so as you can see, we have a payload now that's created by Burp Collaborator. If I hit enter, nothing is going to load, just the value of the payload. But if we go back in here and click on poll now, you will see the requests that were sent to this payload, and it'll even show you the IP that sent this request. So this is similar to you put in an address of a server that you created on the cloud and then read in the logs to see if it got any requests. So it's just an easier way of doing this. That's the whole point of the Burp Collaborator. It gives you a URL that you could submit anywhere when you're testing for any kind of vulnerability, and then you can simply click on poll now to see if that URL received any requests. So now what we're going to do, we're going to actually clear all of this, and we're going to go back to the request that we intercepted, and we're going to remove all of this. And I'm going to paste my Burp Collaborator payload that I just got. So all we're doing, instead of testing for localhost admin or testing for internal services, we're actually putting the link for our Burp collaborator URL. And then if a request is sent to this, I'll be able to see it in my collaborator, because that's all what the collaborator does. So we're going to forward this, forward it again, and let's bring back my collaborator. And I'm going to click on poll now, or it automatically did a poll because it does it every 60 seconds. And as you can see, we actually got a request. So this indicates that this web application is vulnerable to a server-side request forgery, because we sent it a forged request to send another request to my web server. And then I checked the logs of my web server and noticed that this web application actually did fulfill my forged request and send the request to the forged server. In pen tests and in many bug bounty programs, it's actually enough to simply show them that you managed to get the server to send a request to another server to display that there is a blind SSRF vulnerability. But in some cases, you have to display impact, you have to show impact, and therefore you have to take it another step and try to exploit this vulnerability.